As the long twilight of a Pleistocene winter deepens across the European landscape, a faint orange glow pierces the gathering gloom. It is not the last light of the sun, which has barely shown its face above the southern hills, but the flickering firelight from the mouth of a limestone cave. Within the cavern's embrace, shadows dance across rough-hewn walls, illuminating figures that are at once familiar and strangely alien. They are robust, powerfully built, with broad faces, prominent brow ridges, and a quiet, purposeful strength in their movements. These are the Neanderthals, and this scene, repeated across thousands of generations, is the heart of one of the most remarkable stories of survival our planet has ever witnessed. For 400,000 years, a span of time so vast it defies easy comprehension, this species of human not only endured but thrived in a world dominated by ice. They were the native people of Eurasia, a land that was, for much of their history, a brutal and unforgiving place. This was the epoch of the Great Ice Ages, a time when colossal glaciers, miles thick, advanced and retreated in a slow, rhythmic dance of frost and thaw. The world they inhabited was one of extremes, of mammoth steppes stretching to the horizon, of bitter winds that could strip the warmth from life itself, of winters that lasted for 10 months, and of summers that were brief, frantic explosions of life. Our story begins not with a single event, but with an emergence. The Neanderthal lineage, Homo neanderthalensis, diverged from our own ancestral line, Homo heidelbergensis, deep in the mists of prehistory, somewhere around 500,000 years ago. While our direct ancestors remained in Africa, adapting to its varied climates, the population that would become the Neanderthals ventured north, into the challenging and dynamic environments of Europe and Western Asia. It was here, in this crucible of change, that they evolved the unique suite of physical and cultural traits that would define them. They became, in essence, exquisitely specialized for the cold. To understand their survival is to embark on a journey through a lost world. It is to explore not just bones and stones, but the very fabric of their lives, their intimate knowledge of the animal world, from the towering woolly mammoth to the swift reindeer, their mastery of technology, crafting stone tools of such refinement that they speak of a deep, accumulated wisdom, their social bonds, which must have been strong enough to care for the injured and the elderly, ensuring the survival of the group as a whole, and their inner world, a realm of thought and perhaps even belief, hinted at through tantalizing evidence of symbolic behavior and the ritual burial of their dead. They were not the brutish, simple-minded cavemen of outdated caricature. They were a resilient, intelligent, and highly adaptable people whose story is woven into the very bedrock of human history. Their legacy is not merely one of extinction, but of endurance. For nearly twice as long as our own species, Homo sapiens, has walked the earth, the Neanderthals held sway over a continent of ice. This is the story of how they did it, a chronicle of their strengths, their innovations, and their profound connection to a world that tested them to their very limits. It is a story written in the layers of sediment in ancient caves, in the microscopic wear on a flint tool, and in the silent testimony of their fossilized bones. It is a story that deserves to be told and to be heard. To comprehend the magnitude of the Neanderthal achievement, one must first paint a mental portrait of the world they called home. This was not the temperate, forested Europe of today, but a continent transformed by the relentless grip of the Ice Age. The climate of the Pleistocene epoch was not a static deep freeze. Rather, it was a roller coaster of dramatic shifts. For tens of thousands of years, the planet would descend into a glacial period, where polar ice caps expanded, swallowing entire landscapes under sheets of white. Then, a warmer interglacial period would arrive, a fleeting respite that might last 10 or 15,000 years, causing the glaciers to retreat and reveal a green, if still challenging, world. The Neanderthals had to navigate this ever-changing backdrop, their survival dependent on their ability to adapt to both the bitter depths of a glacial maximum and the brief, fertile summers of an interglacial. During the height of an ice age, the world looked profoundly different. So much water was locked up in the continental ice sheets that global sea levels could drop by over 100 meters. This exposed vast plains that are now submerged beneath the sea, such as the land bridge connecting Britain to mainland Europe, known as Doggerland, and the expansive connection between Siberia and Alaska, Beringer. The very shape of the continent was altered, creating new migration routes for animals and humans alike, but also expanding the reach of the harsh, dry conditions. The air itself was different, colder, drier, and often thick with fine wind-blown dust called loess. The great ice sheets, centered over Scandinavia and the Alps, acted like powerful engines, shaping the climate for thousands of miles around. Cold, dense air flowing off the glaciers generated fierce, persistent winds that scoured the landscape. The average global temperature was about 5 to 10 degrees Celsius colder than today, but in the heart of Europe, winters could be unimaginably more severe. In place of the deciduous and coniferous forests we know today, the dominant biome was the mammoth steppe, an immense, cold-weather grassland that stretched from the Atlantic coast of Europe all the way to eastern Siberia. This was not a barren wasteland, but a rich and productive ecosystem. It was maintained by the dry climate and the grazing of immense herds of megafauna. The steppe was covered in tough grasses, sedges, and low-growing herbs, plants that could survive the harsh conditions and short growing season. This vast open landscape was the Neanderthals' hunting ground, their supermarket, and their homeland. This world teemed with a cast of animals that seemed like creatures from myth. The most iconic was the woolly mammoth, a shaggy titan with immense, curved tusks, roaming in herds that shook the ground. Alongside it was the woolly rhinoceros, a formidable beast clad in thick, plate-like skin. There were giant elk, known as Irish elk, with antlers spanning over 3 meters. Massive herds of bison, reindeer, and wild horses migrated across the plains, their movements dictated by the seasons. And sharing this landscape with the Neanderthals were powerful predators: the cave lion, larger than its African cousin, the stealthy leopard, the relentless wolf, and the massive cave hyena, a scavenger and hunter capable of challenging even humans for a prized carcass. This, then, was the stage upon which the Neanderthal drama unfolded: a land of immense scale, brutal challenges, and profound beauty. It was a world that demanded strength, intelligence, and cooperation. The Neanderthals did not simply eke out an existence in this environment. They learned to read its signs, to predict the movements of its animals, to find shelter from its storms, and to draw sustenance from its frozen soil. They became an integral part of the ecosystem, a formidable predator whose survival was a testament to their deep understanding of the crucible of ice and stone they had inherited. Their physical evolution was the first and most fundamental adaptation to this world, shaping them into the ultimate Ice Age humans. The environment of Ice Age Europe did not merely shape the Neanderthals' way of life, it sculpted their very bodies. Over hundreds of thousands of years, the relentless pressures of a cold, demanding climate forged a human form that was, in its own right, a masterpiece of evolutionary engineering. To see a Neanderthal was to see a creature built for power, endurance, and heat retention, a physiological declaration of survival in a world of ice. The most immediate and striking feature of a Neanderthal was their build. They were stocky and robust, with a barrel-chested torso that sat upon short, powerful limbs. This body plan, known as a hyperpolar physique, is a classic adaptation to cold environments seen in other Arctic mammals. The principle is simple: to minimize surface area relative to volume. A compact body with shorter extremities loses far less heat than a tall, lanky one. The large chest cavity housed massive lungs and a powerful heart, necessary for both the high-altitude activity common in their mountainous habitats and the intense bursts of exertion required for hunting large game. Their bones were thick and heavy, with areas for muscle attachment that were far more pronounced than in modern humans, indicating a life of immense physical strain. This muscular power was evident from head to toe. Their shoulders were broad and sloping. Their arms and legs were thick with muscle. Analysis of their arm bones suggests that their right arms were particularly powerful, a testament to a lifetime of spear thrusting, hide-working, and tool-making. Their hands were broad, with strong, thick fingers tipped with wide fingertips, capable of both fine manipulation and a crushing grip. Their feet were also wider and broader than ours, providing a stable platform for traversing uneven terrain. This was not the body of a distance runner, but of a wrestler, a close-quarters combatant who could withstand tremendous force and deliver it in return. The Neanderthal face was equally distinctive and equally functional. It protruded forward in the midface, creating a large, prominent nose. Far from being a mere aesthetic feature, this was a crucial internal air conditioning system. The vast nasal passages would have served to warm and humidify the cold, dry air of the steppes before it reached their sensitive lungs, while also recovering moisture and heat from exhaled breath. Their cheekbones swept back at a subtle angle, helping to channel airflow. Beneath this pronounced nose was a jaw that lacked the pointed chin of modern humans, but was nonetheless strong, anchoring a set of teeth that show clear signs of being used as a third hand for gripping, tearing, and clamping down on materials. Perhaps the most telling feature was the brow ridge, the thick, bony bar that arched over their eyes. This structure, along with their low, sloping forehead and a noticeably rounded back to the skull, which housed a large brain, often larger on average than that of Homo sapiens. This skull architecture was incredibly robust, providing protection for the vital organ within. Some theories suggest these features were an adaptation to the high-stress, high-impact lifestyle of a big game hunter, where a fall or a blow to the head was a constant risk. Their very skin and hair were likely adaptations. Genetic evidence recovered from Neanderthal bones indicates that many populations had pale skin and red or light brown hair traits that would have been advantageous in the dim light of the northern latitudes, allowing for more efficient production of vitamin D. Their skin also contained adaptations that provided a tougher barrier against pathogens and injuries, a necessary defense in a life lived in close contact with animal carcasses and the elements. This physical form was the foundation of their survival. It was a body that conserved energy and heat with ruthless efficiency, a body that could generate explosive power, and a body that could endure the grueling demands of a nomadic life in a frozen world. But this magnificent biological machine required immense fuel. The caloric needs of a Neanderthal, maintaining such a muscular physique in such a cold climate, was staggering, likely requiring thousands of calories more per day than a modern human of comparable size. This constant, pressing need for energy drove every aspect of their existence, turning them into the most formidable hunters of their age. Their bodies were the instruments. Next, we must examine the tools and techniques that allowed them to play the symphony of the hunt. The Neanderthal body was a formidable instrument, but it was their mind that truly unlocked the resources of their harsh world. That intellect is most tangibly preserved in the countless stone tools they left behind, artifacts that speak of a deep, cumulative tradition of knowledge and skill. For the Neanderthals, stone was not just a rock. It was the raw material for survival, the key to food, shelter, and clothing. Their technological prowess, centered primarily on what archaeologists call the Mousterian tradition, reveals a people who were not merely primitive scavengers but sophisticated artisans and strategists. The process began with the careful selection of the right stone. Neanderthals were connoisseurs of flint, chert, and quartzite, seeking out high-quality nodules that would fracture in a predictable way. They understood the geology of their landscapes, knowing where to find the best materials, often traveling significant distances or establishing quarries in productive areas. The initial step was to create a core, a larger piece of stone from which smaller flakes would be struck. Using a hammerstone, a skilled toolmaker would strike the core with precise blows, each one aimed at removing a flake with sharp razor-like edges. This was not a haphazard process. It required an intimate understanding of fracture mechanics, angles of force, and the internal structure of the stone itself. The resulting flakes were the versatile workhorses of the Neanderthal toolkit. Many flakes were used as is for quick, cutting tasks, butchering game, slicing meat, scraping hides, or whittling wood. The true hallmark of Mousterian technology, however, was the refinement of these flakes into standardized tool forms. The most characteristic of these was the Levallois point, a teardrop-shaped flake that was meticulously pre-shaped while still part of the core. Detaching this preformed point was the act of a master craftsperson, requiring foresight and planning many steps ahead. These points were then often hafted or attached to wooden shafts using plant resins and sinew, creating thrusting spears. The thrusting spear was a revolutionary technology. It was not designed to be thrown over long distances, but to be used at close quarters, a fact that reveals the incredible courage and strength of the Neanderthal hunter. Their hunting strategy was one of intimate confrontation. Imagine a group of hunters, armed with these sturdy spears, approaching a massive bison or a woolly rhinoceros. They would have needed to get dangerously close, using terrain and teamwork to isolate an animal, before driving the spear deep into its vitals with immense force. This was a high-risk, high-reward endeavor that demanded not only physical bravery, but also sophisticated communication, coordination, and an unprofound understanding of animal behavior. Beyond spear points, the Neanderthal toolkit included a variety of specialized implements. Scrapers, with their strong, durable edges, were essential for processing animal hides, removing fat and flesh to turn them into warm clothing and shelter covers. Notched denticulates, tools with a serrated edge, could have been used for working wood or bone. Small, sharp points might have been used for detailed tasks like piercing hides for sewing. There is also growing evidence that they used a simple adhesive made from birch bark tar to fix stone points to handles, a process that requires controlled heating of the bark in an oxygen-free environment, a clear sign of complex cognitive ability. This was not a static technology. Over time and across the vast expanse from Portugal to Siberia, regional variations emerged, showing that Neanderthals adapted their tools to local resources and specific prey animals. Their relationship with the material world was dynamic. They were not just users of tools. They were innovators who understood the properties of their world and manipulated them to meet the relentless demands of survival. The stone tools they left behind are a silent language, telling us a story of intelligence, planning, and a deep-seated resilience that allowed them to face the giants of the Ice Age on their own terms. The successful use of these tools, however, depended on something even more fundamental: a vast and intricate knowledge of the landscape and the creatures that moved within it. The finely crafted spear, resting in a strong hand, was the culmination of technology, but it was only the final act in a much longer and more complex drama. The life of a Neanderthal was inextricably linked to the great beasts of the mammoth steppe. Their survival depended on a deep, symbiotic relationship with the megafauna, a relationship built not on dominance, but on an intimate and hard-won knowledge. Hunting for them was not a sporadic event. It was a central pillar of their existence, a demanding profession that dictated their movements, their social structure, and their very understanding of the world. The hunt began long before any weapon was raised. It began with tracking, with reading the subtle signs of the landscape. A Neanderthal hunter could interpret the meaning of a broken twig, the freshness of a hoofprint in the mud, the direction of the wind carrying the scent of a herd. They knew the migration routes of reindeer and bison, as well as we know the streets of our own cities. They understood the seasonal behaviors of animals, where the horses would gather to foal in the spring, where the mammoths would go to find water in a dry summer, where the herds would congregate in the sheltered valleys during the deepest winter. This knowledge was passed down through generations, an oral and experiential map of the continent that was as vital as any tool. The preferred strategy was ambush. Neanderthals were not pursuit hunters who ran their prey to exhaustion over long distances, a technique more suited to the open, warmer savannas of Africa. In the dense forests, rugged valleys, and along the river corridors of Ice Age Europe, the close-quarter ambush was far more effective. They would use the terrain to their advantage, driving animals towards natural traps like swamps, box canyons, or steep riverbanks. Some sites show evidence of mass kills, where entire herds of bison or horses were stampeded over cliffs, a testament to sophisticated group coordination and an understanding of animal psychology. The most telling evidence of their hunting prowess comes from the animal remains found at their occupation sites. The bones of large, powerful, and dangerous animals are commonplace. We find the remains of woolly rhinoceros, giant deer, and even the mighty mammoth itself. But the true staple of their diet, across much of their range and time, was a different creature: the steppe bison and the red deer. These animals provided a perfect package of meat, fat, hides, bone, and sinew. The analysis of these bones reveals cut marks from stone tools, often made during skilled butchery, and fracture patterns indicating that bones were smashed open to access the nutritious marrow inside. The act of the hunt itself was fraught with peril. To confront a wounded bison or a cornered wild boar with a thrusting spear was to risk severe injury or death. The skeletal remains of Neanderthals themselves tell this story vividly. Many individuals show evidence of healed fractures, particularly to the head and upper body, patterns that mirror those of modern rodeo riders who work with large, unpredictable animals. These injuries were not just accidents, they were occupational hazards. They also speak to a critical aspect of Neanderthal society: care. An individual who survived such severe injuries did so because the group provided for them, shared food with them, and protected them while they healed. This compassion was a survival strategy, as important as any weapon. Their diet, however, was not exclusively meat. While they were top-level predators, as isotopic analysis of their bones confirms, they were also opportunistic omnivores. In the summer and autumn, they would have foraged for a variety of plant foods, berries, nuts, seeds, roots, and mushrooms. They understood the seasonal cycles of plants and would have exploited these resources to add crucial vitamins, carbohydrates, and variety to their heavily meat-based diet. This flexibility, this ability to switch between different food sources depending on availability, was another key to their longevity. The successful hunt was a communal triumph. It provided not just food, but the raw materials for everything else. The hides would be scraped and softened for clothing and blankets. The sinew would become thread for sewing. The bones and antlers would be fashioned into tools like awls and retouchers. The fat would be rendered for food, fuel, and perhaps even preserving hides. Nothing was wasted. The hunt was the engine that powered their entire world, a dangerous, demanding, and deeply intelligent dance with the giants of the ice, a dance they mastered for hundreds of thousands of years. But to undertake this life, they needed more than just skill. They needed a home, a base from which to navigate the vast and challenging landscape. The life of a Neanderthal was one of constant motion, a rhythm dictated by the seasons and the migrations of their prey. They were not nomadic in a random, aimless sense. They were highly territorial, moving within a well-understood and familiar home range that could span hundreds of square kilometers. Their concept of home was not defined by a single, permanent structure, but by a network of places, each serving a specific purpose in the cyclical pattern of their year. Finding and creating shelter from the brutal elements was a fundamental skill, and their solutions were as varied as the landscapes they inhabited. The most iconic Neanderthal homes are the caves and rock shelters that dot the limestone regions of Europe and Asia. These natural formations offered immediate and vital protection. A good cave provided a stable temperature, shelter from wind, rain, and snow, and a defensible position. But not any cave would do. The choice was strategic. They favored south-facing openings that captured the low-lying sun of winter, maximizing warmth and light. Proximity to essential resources was critical. A source of fresh water, a supply of good stone for tools, and access to hunting grounds were all determining factors. Within these shelters, they created organized living spaces. Archaeological layers reveal the ghostly outlines of their domestic life. Hearths are the most common feature, and they were the pulsating heart of the home. Fire provided warmth, light, protection from predators, and a means to cook food, which made it more digestible and safer to eat. But the use of fire went beyond mere utility. Some hearths show evidence of being maintained for long periods, suggesting a central, cherished fire around which the social life of the group revolved. The distribution of artifacts around these hearths often indicates specialized activity areas, a place for tool-making littered with stone flakes, a place for butchering marked by bone fragments, a quieter area perhaps for sleeping. However, caves were not always available. Across the vast plains of northern Europe, where limestone formations are scarce, Neanderthals demonstrated remarkable adaptability by building shelters in the open air. Evidence from sites like Moldova in Ukraine reveals impressive structures created from the most abundant material on the mammoth steppe. Mammoth bones. Using the gigantic skulls, jaws, tusks, and long bones of mammoths, they constructed circular or oval foundations. These massive bones would then have been covered with animal hides, weighed down by more bones or tusks, to create sturdy, dome-like dwellings. These were not temporary windbreaks. They were substantial houses, capable of housing extended family groups and protecting them from the harsh steppe winds. The very act of building such structures, which required coordinated effort and transportation of heavy materials, speaks volumes about their planning abilities and social cohesion. Their movement across the landscape followed a logical, seasonal pattern. In the warmer months, groups might have been smaller, more dispersed, and highly mobile, following herds into highland pastures and exploiting summer resources. They would use temporary open-air camps, leaving behind only faint traces of their passage. As autumn turned to winter, they would likely have consolidated into larger groups and moved to more sheltered winter bases, a reliable cave or a stout bone-built house in a protected valley. Here, they would have lived on stored resources like dried meat and fat and undertaken hunts closer to home. This rhythm of life, this intimate knowledge of a territory, this ability to exploit different types of shelter, and this seasonal ebb and flow of social organization was a key to their resilience. It allowed them to exploit the rich resources of the brief summer across a wide area, while also battening down for the long, lean winter in a secure base. Their home was not a single point on a map, but the entire landscape itself, a network of known paths, resources, and safe havens. This deep connection to their territory was intertwined with the fabric of their social world, a world built on the strong, enduring bonds of family and community that enabled them to face the immense challenges of their existence together. The survival of the Neanderthals through hundreds of millennia of ice was not merely a triumph of individual strength or skill. It was a testament to the power of the group, in an environment where a solitary individual would have perished quickly. The social bonds they forged were as critical to their survival as any tool or weapon. While we cannot hear their conversations or observe their daily interactions, the archaeological record provides profound, if silent, evidence of a complex social life rooted in compassion, cooperation, and a deep sense of community. The fundamental unit of Neanderthal society was almost certainly the band, a small group of perhaps 20 to 30 individuals, likely consisting of several related families. These bands were not isolated. They existed within a larger social network, a metapopulation spread across the landscape. Genetic evidence suggests that bands were connected with individuals, likely women, moving between groups to find mates, preventing inbreeding and strengthening social ties across a region. This practice indicates a sophisticated understanding of kinship and a social structure that extended beyond the immediate horizon. The most compelling window into their social world comes from evidence of care for the injured and the elderly. The fossil record reveals individuals who lived for years with severe disabilities that would have made them a burden on the group. There is the famous Shanidar one, an old man from Iraq, who had a withered arm, a crippled leg, and was likely blind in one eye. He also had suffered a devastating blow to the head that had healed, but probably left him with significant brain damage. He could not have hunted or contributed to the daily labor of survival. Yet, he lived to a ripe old age for a Neanderthal, clearly cared for by his band for decades. Another individual, from La Chapelle-Saints in France, suffered from severe arthritis and had lost most of his teeth, meaning his food would have had to be softened or pre-chewed for him by others. These are not isolated cases. The survival of these vulnerable individuals speaks volumes. It tells us that Neanderthals possessed a deep sense of empathy and obligation. They understood that the strength of the group was measured not just by the power of its hunters, but by its ability to protect all its members. This compassion provided a social safety net that increased the resilience of the entire band, ensuring that knowledge and experience were not lost with a single injury. Life within the band would have been intensely cooperative. The tasks of survival were divided, though not necessarily along strict, modern gender lines. While hunting large game was likely a primary activity for stronger adults, the entire group would have been involved in the processing of the carcass. Butchering, hide preparation, and meat preservation were communal activities. The gathering of plant foods, firewood, raw materials for tools, and the tending of the central hearth would have been shared responsibilities. Children would have learned essential skills through observation and play, gradually taking on more responsibility as they grew. Communication was the glue that held this all together. The physical evidence for Neanderthal speech is a subject of ongoing debate, but their anatomy provides clues. They possessed a hyoid bone, essential for speech, similar to our own. The genetic evidence shows they had the same version of the FOXP2 gene, which is linked to language processing in modern humans. While their language may have been different in its complexity and structure, it is almost inconceivable that they could have coordinated the sophisticated hunts, passed down intricate tool-making techniques, and maintained the complex social relationships we see evidence for, without a sophisticated form of vocal communication. Theirs was likely a world rich with sound, the sounds of tool-making, of butchery, of children playing, and of voices sharing stories, plans, and knowledge around the fire as the wind howled outside. This social fabric, woven from threads of kinship, care, and shared labor, created a resilient buffer against the harshness of the Ice Age. It was a world where an individual's identity was deeply intertwined with the fate of the group. This collective strength allowed them to face dangers, overcome tragedies, and passed their hard-won knowledge from one generation to the next. But their inner world was not solely concerned with the practicalities of survival. There are tantalizing hints that their lives were also touched by something more, by a consciousness that reached beyond the immediate needs of the body and into the realm of symbolism, and perhaps even the spirit. Beyond the tangible remains of stone tools, hearths, and butchered bones lies the most enigmatic aspect of the Neanderthal story: their inner life. What did they think about? Did they have beliefs? Did they experience the world in a way that we would recognize as symbolic or spiritual? While the evidence is sparse and open to interpretation, a growing body of archaeological discoveries suggests that the Neanderthal mind was capable of more than just practical problem solving. It was a mind that may have sought meaning, expressed itself symbolically, and confronted the mystery of death with a sense of ritual. The most profound evidence for this complex inner world comes from their treatment of the dead. Across their range, from Western Europe to the foothills of Asia, there are clear and deliberate burials. At sites like La Chapelle-aux-Saints in France, Shanidar Cave in Iraq, and Kibera Cave in Israel, Neanderthal skeletons have been found carefully placed in excavated pits, often in a sleeping position, sometimes with the knees drawn up towards the chest. These were not bodies simply left where they fell or dragged into a cave by scavengers. The positioning is intentional, purposeful. The burial at Shanidar Cave offers an even more poignant glimpse. One individual, Shanidar 4, was found surrounded by large amounts of pollen from brightly colored flowers like yarrow, cornflower, and hollyhock. This was initially interpreted as a deliberate funerary offering, a flower burial, suggesting a ritual act of remembrance and perhaps a belief in an afterlife, while later studies suggested rodents may have burrowed and introduced the pollen. The debate continues, and the possibility remains a powerful and evocative one. Even without the flowers, the act of burial itself is significant. It implies a respect for the deceased individual, a desire to protect the body from scavengers, and perhaps the beginnings of an abstract concept about what happens after death. It is a behavior that separates the world of biological necessity from the world of cultural meaning. Beyond burial, there are other, more fleeting hints of symbolic behavior. In several sites across Europe, Neanderthals collected unusual objects: crystals, oddly shaped fossils, and eagle talons. At Krapina in Croatia, 8 white-tailed eagle talons were found together, showing polish and cut marks, indicating they were strung together as a necklace or pendant. Eagles were not a significant food source. Their talons had no practical value. Their collection and modification points to a symbolic or aesthetic purpose. They may have been worn as ornaments, perhaps denoting status, group affiliation, or simply for their beauty. There is also the fascinating evidence of abstract markings. In a cave at Gorham's Cave in Gibraltar, a Neanderthal carved a hashtag-like cross-hatched pattern into the bedrock of the cave floor. This was not a functional mark. It was a deliberate, geometric engraving. Similarly, in France, a piece of rock bearing ochre has been found with grooves scraped into it by a Neanderthal. The use of pigments, like red and yellow ochre, is also attested at several sites. While ochre can have practical uses as an ingredient in hide glue or as a sunscreen, its use in symbolic contexts is well documented in later human societies for body painting or ritual art. These scattered pieces of evidence, the burials, the collected talons, the engravings, the pigments, do not add up to a full picture of a Neanderthal belief system, but they strongly suggest that their cognitive landscape was not a barren one. They were not mere automata, focused solely on survival. They were conscious beings who appear to have recognized patterns, appreciated unusual objects, and perhaps felt the need to mark their world in a way that transcended utility. They may have had stories, myths, and a sense of their place in the natural world that was rich with meaning. This emerging picture complicates the old view of Neanderthals as brutish and simple. It suggests that the capacity for symbolic thought, a hallmark of modern humanity, did not arise suddenly with our species. Instead, it may have deep roots, appearing in a different, parallel branch of the human family tree. The Neanderthals were likely standing at the dawn of meaning, beginning to explore the world of symbols that would come to define the human experience. This rich and resilient way of life, honed over 400,000 years, was about to face its greatest challenge, a challenge that would not come from the ice or the mammoths, but from a new kind of human arriving from the south. For over 300,000 years, the Neanderthals had mastered the rhythm of the ice ages. Their world was one of predictable, if extreme, cycles. Long glacial winters followed by shorter, warmer interglacials. They had adapted to this pendulum swing, their culture and physiology fine-tuned to its tempo. But around 50,000 years ago, the rhythm began to falter. The climate entered a period of unprecedented instability, and this time, the change was different. It was not a slow, gradual shift, but a roller coaster of wild fluctuations. This period of climatic turmoil set the stage for the final act of the Neanderthal story, coinciding with the arrival of a new and formidable presence on the Eurasian landscape. Homo sapiens, the stability of the mammoth steppe, that vast productive grassland that had been the Neanderthals' hunting ground for millennia, began to break down. The climate swings became more rapid and severe. In the space of a few generations, temperatures could soar, turning dry grasslands into wetter, forested areas, only to plummet again just as quickly, bringing back the cold and the open steppe. This instability was devastating for the highly specialized ecosystem. The great herds of megafauna, like the woolly mammoth and rhinoceros, relied on the consistent presence of the steppe. As forests expanded in warmer, wetter periods, their grazing lands fragmented and shrank. The predictable migration routes that Neanderthals had depended upon for generations became unreliable. For a species so exquisitely adapted to a specific environment, this volatility posed an existential threat. The Neanderthals' survival strategy was built around a deep, localized knowledge of a stable territory. They knew where the animals would be each season, where the best stone for tools could be found, and where the most sheltered caves were located. But what happens when the animals are no longer there? When familiar valleys become dense, unfamiliar forests? Their low population density, spread thinly across the continent, made it difficult to rapidly adapt or shift their ranges. A local band facing the collapse of its traditional prey animals might simply have dwindled, their specialized hunting techniques less effective against the smaller, more dispersed game of the forests. It was into this world of flux that our own species, Homo sapiens, began to migrate out of Africa and into the Neanderthals' homeland. The initial encounters between these two human species were likely sporadic, occurring in the corridors of the Levant and southeastern Europe. For a time, they may have coexisted, their populations too small and scattered for significant conflict. There was even contact, as proven by the undeniable evidence of interbreeding that lives on in the DNA of most non-African people today. However, Homo sapiens brought with them a different kind of adaptability. Their technology was often more versatile, including finely crafted blade tools, sewing needles for creating form-fitting clothing, and importantly, projectile technology like spear throwers that allowed for hunting at a safer distance. Their social networks appear to have been larger and more extensive, allowing for the exchange of ideas, innovations, and resources over much wider areas. When a local environment changed, these wider networks may have provided a buffer, a source of information and support that more isolated Neanderthal bands lacked. This is not to say that there was outright warfare. The disappearance of the Neanderthals was almost certainly not a swift genocide. It was likely a complex process of absorption and replacement over thousands of years. As Homo sapiens populations grew, they may have competed more effectively for the same scarce resources in a deteriorating environment. A slight edge in hunting efficiency, a slightly higher birth rate, or a greater resilience to new diseases introduced by the newcomers could, over generations, lead to a significant demographic shift. The Neanderthals, masters of a world of ice and giants, found themselves caught between a hammer and an anvil. A rapidly changing climate that undermined their ancient way of life and the arrival of a new, highly iterable and socially complex competitor. Their fate was not sealed by a single battle or a sudden catastrophe, but by a slow, inexorable shift in the balance of a continent. The world they had dominated for so long was transforming into a place where their profound and hard-won specialties were no longer enough. The final chapter of their long history was one of resilience in the face of overwhelming change, a gradual fading rather than a sudden fall. The world of the Neanderthals did not end with a dramatic crash or a final, fading breath in a lonely cave. Their disappearance was a gradual process, a slow dimming of a light that had burned for hundreds of thousands of years. Across their vast range, from the Atlantic coasts to the plains of Siberia, The archaeological record shows their distinctive tools becoming less frequent, eventually vanishing entirely from the layers of sediment by around 40,000 years ago. The caves that had echoed with their activities for millennia fell silent, their hearths growing cold. But to say they vanished without a trace is a profound misconception. The legacy of the Neanderthals endures, not as a forgotten footnote in history, but as a vital part of our own story and the story of humanity itself. The most intimate and undeniable legacy is written in our very cells. Genetic research has conclusively shown that populations of Homo sapiens originating from outside Africa carry within them a small but significant portion of Neanderthal DNA, typically ranging from 1 to 4%. This is the result of those ancient encounters, evidence that our ancestors and the Neanderthals not only met but interbred, and that their hybrid children were accepted and integrated into human tribes. This genetic inheritance is not merely a historical curiosity, it has functional consequences. Some of these Neanderthal genes are associated with aspects of our immune system, potentially providing early Homo sapiens populations with a defense against Eurasian pathogens. Other genes may have influenced traits like skin pigmentation, hair texture, and even aspects of sleep patterns and mood regulation. In a very real sense, a part of the Neanderthal survives in billions of people today, a ghost in our genome that connects us directly to their lost world. Beyond our biology, their legacy may also reside in the foundations of human culture. For decades, the great creative explosion of art, music, and sophisticated tool-making around 40,000 years ago was attributed solely to the arrival of modern humans in Europe. But the timeline is now blurred. We have seen the evidence of their potential for symbolism, the burials, the eagle talon jewelry, the abstract engravings. It is possible, even likely, that the earliest Homo sapiens in Europe encountered Neanderthals who already engaged in these behaviors. The ideas and practices of these ancient natives of Europe may have influenced the newcomers, sparking a cultural exchange that accelerated the development of what we recognize as modern human culture. The Neanderthals may not have been mere imitators, but contributors to the dawn of human symbolic expression. Perhaps their greatest legacy, however, is the lesson of their endurance. Their story is one of incredible resilience, a testament to the ability of a human species to thrive in conditions that would be unthinkable to us today. For over 400,000 years, they weathered the extremes of the Ice Age. They faced down mammoths and cave lions, survived brutal winters, and adapted to a constantly shifting world, long before our own species had even left Africa. They were not failures. They were, by any measure, one of the most successful hominin species ever to walk the earth. Their eventual disappearance was not due to any inherent inferiority, but to a confluence of factors: climate change, competition, and perhaps just the cruel whims of history and demography that would have challenged any species. The silence that followed their passing is therefore an illusion. When we look in the mirror, we may see a faint echo of their robust features in the faces of some. When we study the earliest art of Europe, we can wonder if a Neanderthal hand first inspired the impulse to mark a cave wall. And when we contemplate the challenges of survival in a harsh world, we can remember a people who were the ultimate masters of adaptation, whose strength, intelligence, and profound social bonds allowed them to reign for a span of time that dwarfs our entire civilization. The Neanderthals are gone, but they are not forgotten. They remain our closest evolutionary relatives, a silent partner in our own journey, and a powerful reminder of the many different paths that the story of humanity can take. Their long twilight over the icebound plains of prehistory stands as a monument to the enduring human spirit, in all its diverse and magnificent forms. The story of the Neanderthals, as we have traced it from their origins to their legacy, is not a closed book. It is a narrative constantly being rewritten, its pages illuminated by the flickering light of new discoveries. For every question we answer, several more arise, pulling us deeper into a dialogue with the deep past. The silent evidence left behind a tooth, a flake of stone, a speck of ancient DNA whispers fragments of a much larger epic, and it is the work of scientists across many disciplines to piece these fragments together. The study of the Neanderthals is a dynamic detective story, one that challenges our assumptions about what it means to be human. One of the most profound and debated questions revolves around the nature of their cognition. How similar was their inner world to our own? We have seen the evidence for symbolic behavior, but was it a consistent part of their culture or a rare ephemeral glimmer? The recent discovery of cave paintings in Spain, dated to a time when only Neanderthals were present in Europe, has ignited fierce debate. If confirmed, it would radically alter our perception, placing them squarely in the realm of artistic expression. Similarly, the finding of a carefully assembled circle of broken stalagmites deep inside a French cave, built by Neanderthals, suggests an activity that is hard to interpret as purely utilitarian. Were these the first steps toward ritual, toward a concept of the sacred? The evidence teases us with possibilities, but rarely offers definitive answers, forcing us to consider a spectrum of cognitive complexity. The mystery of their extinction also remains a fertile ground for inquiry. While the combination of climate change and competition with Homo sapiens is the prevailing model, the precise mechanisms are still unclear. Was it direct conflict? Unlikely to have been the sole cause, given the sparse populations. Was it a more subtle, ecological competition? Did Homo sapiens, with their potentially more efficient hunting techniques or broader diets, simply outcompete Neanderthals for scarce resources in a changing world? Another compelling theory involves disease. The arrival of Homo sapiens may have introduced novel pathogens to which the isolated Neanderthal populations had no immunity, sparking silent epidemics that weakened their bands long before any direct contact. This is a hypothesis that is incredibly difficult to prove, but it remains a plausible piece of the puzzle. New technologies are constantly providing fresh lenses through which to examine these questions. Paleogenetics, the study of ancient DNA, has revolutionized the field. Scientists can now not only confirm interbreeding but also begin to understand the functional implications of the Neanderthal genes we carry. They can study genetic clues about Neanderthal population sizes, which suggests they lived in small, isolated groups, making them vulnerable to inbreeding and demographic collapse. Advanced chemical analysis of dental calculus, the plaque on their teeth reveals direct evidence of their diet, down to the specific plants they ate, and even the fact that they used plants like poplar bark, which contains salicylic acid, the active ingredient in aspirin, possibly for pain relief. Each season of excavation holds the potential for a discovery that could overturn a decades-old theory. A new burial, a new piece of adorned jewelry, a new genetic sequence. Any of these can change the narrative. The story of the Neanderthals is therefore not a static monument, but a living, breathing field of study. It teaches us humility, reminding us that our understanding of the past is provisional, always subject to revision. It also underscores the profound connection we share with this other branch of humanity. In seeking to understand them, we are, in a very real sense, seeking to understand a part of ourselves. The dialogue with the deep past continues, and the Neanderthals, though silent, remain our most compelling interlocutors as our journey through the world of the Neanderthals draws to a close. We are left not with a simple conclusion, but with a profound sense of connection across a vast chasm of time. The image of the hulking, brutish caveman has been utterly dismantled, replaced by a far more compelling and human portrait. That of a resilient, intelligent, and deeply social people, masters of their environment for an almost unimaginable span of time. Their story is not a separate thread in the tapestry of prehistory, but one intricately woven into our own. To contemplate the Neanderthals is to expand our definition of family. They were not merely evolutionary cousins. For a brief period, they became partners and parents to our ancestors. The genetic legacy they left in our bodies is a permanent reminder of that intimacy. This kinship forces us to look beyond the superficial differences of a heavier brow ridge or a more robust skeleton, and to recognize the shared fundamentals of human experience that we likely possessed. The warmth of a fire on a cold night, the comfort of a social group, the care for a wounded comrade, the grief for a lost loved one, the drive to create and to leave a mark. These are not exclusive to Homo sapiens. The evidence strongly suggests that the Neanderthals knew these experiences too. Theirs was a different humanity, but a humanity nonetheless. Their long reign also offers a crucial perspective on our own place in the world. In an age dominated by concerns about climate change and environmental sustainability, the Neanderthals stand as a testament to the power of adaptation. They survived hundreds of thousands of years of climatic upheaval that dwarf the changes we face today. They did so through a deep, generational knowledge of their world, through technological ingenuity, and above all, through the strength of their communal bonds. Their story is a lesson in resilience, but also a cautionary tale about the vulnerabilities of highly specialized societies in the face of rapid, multifaceted change. Finally, the silence that followed their disappearance is not an emptiness, it is an invitation to reflection. The gradual fading of the Neanderthals reminds us that history is not a simple march of progress, with one species inevitably and superiorly replacing another. It is a complex web of chance, environmental pressure, and the intertwining of fates. Their world, the mammoth steppe with its iconic giants, is also gone, lost to the warming climate and the spread of forests. In remembering them, we also remember a lost ecosystem, a vanished chapter in the Earth's history. The flickering firelight that once illuminated the faces of a Neanderthal family in their cave has long been extinguished. The winds that howled across the steppes they hunted now blow over different landscapes, but the echoes of their lives remain. They are in the stones they shaped with such skill, in the earth that holds their carefully buried dead, and in the very DNA that shapes billions of people alive today. The Neanderthals challenge us to see humanity not as a single, solitary line, but as a branching tree, with many twigs and limbs, some of which have fallen. By understanding their story, we enrich our understanding of our own capacity for survival, for compassion, and for forging a life of meaning in a world of immense challenge. They were, and always will be, a part of us. The story of the Neanderthals, as it has been told, is not one that was easily uncovered. It is a narrative painstakingly reconstructed from the faintest of whispers from the past, a puzzle with most of its pieces forever lost. Understanding how we have come to know this story is as fascinating as the story itself. It is a tale of scientific ingenuity, of evolving technologies, and of a constant refinement of our methods for interrogating the silent evidence of the deep past. The portrait of the Neanderthal we have today is the result of a multidisciplinary symphony, where each scientific discipline contributes a unique voice. The foundation of Neanderthal archaeology remains, quite literally, the earth. The principle of stratigraphia, that deeper layers of sediment are older than those above them, provides the essential timeline. Excavations are exercises in meticulous patience. Archaeologists dig slowly, often with dental picks and brushes, mapping the position of every artifact, every bone fragment, every piece of charcoal in 3 dimensions. A single site can take decades to fully excavate and analyze. The context of an object is everything. A Levallois point found next to the bones of a woolly rhinoceros tells a story of hunting. The same point found in a hearth area might suggest tool maintenance. The microscopic analysis of where patterns on stone tools can reveal whether they were used for cutting meat, scraping hides, or whittling wood, bringing the static object back to life. The bones of the Neanderthals themselves are treasure troves of information. Traditional physical anthropology can determine an individual's sex, approximate age at death, and identify injuries or diseases. The study of dentition, the teeth, provides a remarkable record of an individual's life growth. Lines can indicate periods of physiological stress, such as famine or illness, during childhood. But it is in the realm of chemical analysis that the most startling revelations have occurred. Isotopic analysis of bones and teeth, particularly of elements like nitrogen and carbon, can reveal a person's diet. By comparing the isotopic signature of a Neanderthal bone to that of local animals, scientists can determine their position in the food chain, confirming they were top-level predators. Analysis of dental calculus, the hardened plaque on teeth, has preserved microfossils of plants, starch granules, and even bits of DNA, offering a direct menu of their last meals. The greatest revolution, however, has been the advent of paleogenetics, the ability to extract and sequence ancient DNA from Neanderthal fossils. A feat once thought impossible has transformed our understanding. From a sliver of bone, scientists can now confirm the species, determine genetic relationships between individuals, and estimate population sizes. We know from genetics that Neanderthal populations were small and suffered from low genetic diversity, making them vulnerable. We know they interbred with our ancestors. We can even identify genes they possessed that are related to skin color, hair type, and immune function. This technology is advancing at a breathtaking pace, and each new genome sequenced adds another layer of depth to our knowledge. Other scientific techniques provide crucial environmental context. Palynology, the study of ancient pollen grains preserved in lake beds and peat bogs, reveals the changing vegetation of the Ice Age world, showing the advance and retreat of forests and grasslands. The analysis of ice cores from Greenland and Antarctica provides a global climate record, with bubbles of ancient air revealing temperature and atmospheric composition year by year, allowing us to correlate climatic events with archaeological findings. Geologists help us understand the formation of caves and the sourcing of stone for tools. The picture that emerges is therefore a composite, a mosaic built from countless tiny, fragmented tiles. It is a picture that is constantly being sharpened and at times radically altered. What we know today is undoubtedly incomplete, and some of it may be proven wrong tomorrow by a new discovery in a cave or a laboratory. This is the nature of science, and it is what makes the study of the Neanderthals so endlessly compelling. It is a dialogue with the past, conducted with ever more sophisticated tools, a dialogue that continues to reveal the depth and complexity of our ancient kin. The story of the Neanderthals is not just a story of bones and stones. It is also a story of ideas. How we have perceived them over the past 150 years is a revealing mirror, reflecting our own changing understanding of humanity, evolution, and our place in the natural world. The journey of the Neanderthal in the human imagination, from a dim-witted brute to a complex, sympathetic kin, is a fascinating subplot in their long history, demonstrating that our interpretation of the past is often shaped by the prejudices and paradigms of the present. The first recognized Neanderthal fossils, discovered in Germany's Neander Valley in 1856, arrived at a turbulent time. Charles Darwin's On the Origin of Species was still 3 years from publication, but ideas about evolution and humanity's ancestry were already stirring intense debate. The heavy-bowed bones and prominent brow ridge of the Neanderthal specimen were a shock to the scientific establishment. Unable to place this clearly ancient and different form of human, leading anatomists of the day pathologized it. They argued it was not a separate species, but a modern human afflicted with rickets or arthritis, a deformed Cossack soldier from the Napoleonic Wars, or even a stupid and brutish relic of a barbarous race. This initial interpretation set a powerful and enduring stereotype. As more fossils were found and the reality of their antiquity became undeniable, the Neanderthal was cemented in the public and scientific mind as a primitive ancestor, a failed experiment on the road to modern humanity. He was depicted as a stooped, shambling, animalistic creature, club in hand, devoid of intelligence or grace. This image served a convenient purpose for the prevailing social Darwinist attitudes of the late 19th and early 20th centuries. It reinforced the linear, progressive view of evolution, with Homo sapiens sitting triumphantly at the pinnacle. Evidence of their controlled use of fire and their skillful tool-making began to be properly appreciated. Yet, the label of brute persisted, now with a slightly more sophisticated gloss. They were strong and capable, but still cognitively inferior, lacking the spark of innovation that defined our own species. The last few decades have witnessed a dramatic revolution, a true renaissance in Neanderthal studies. The discoveries of deliberate burials, potential symbolic objects, and genetic evidence of interbreeding have fundamentally overturned the old paradigm. The image of the dumb brute has been replaced by one of a capable, intelligent, and empathetic human. This shift is partly due to the sheer weight of new evidence, but it also reflects a broader change in our own worldview. We are now more comfortable with the idea of complexity, with narratives that are not simply about progress and replacement, but about interaction, adaptation, and the branching nature of evolution. We are more willing to grant other forms of humanity their own dignity and their own unique path. Today, the Neanderthal is no longer a cautionary tale of primitivism. Instead, they have become a source of fascination and even kinship. They prompt us to ask deeper questions about what it means to be human. If another type of human with a different biology and a different culture could also care for its weak, perhaps bury its dead with meaning and create symbols, then the essence of humanity must be broader and more inclusive than we once thought. The Neanderthal, once a symbol of our separation from the animal kingdom, has become a symbol of our connection to a wider, richer family tree. Their journey in our minds, from monstrous other to lost sibling, is one of the most meaningful chapters in their enduring legacy. As we reach the end of our exploration, the narrative of the Neanderthals transforms from a linear chronology into a profound meditation on time, resilience, and the very nature of existence. Their story, spanning 400,000 years, does not simply conclude with their physical disappearance. Instead, it leaves behind an unbroken thread that weaves through the fabric of our own species, connecting us to a deep and shared past. The legacy of the Neanderthals is not one of finality, but of continuity, a quiet, persistent echo that challenges us to see our own journey in a grander, more humbling light. Consider the immense scale of their tenure. 400 millennia is a span of time that defies easy comprehension. It represents over 20,000 generations of individuals being born, living, loving, and dying. In that time, they witnessed the slow, majestic advance and retreat of ice sheets, the rise and fall of entire ecosystems, and the comings and goings of countless species. Their world was one of monumental patience and cyclical change, a rhythm far removed from the accelerated pace of modern life. Their success was measured not in centuries, but in epochs. This longevity alone stands as a monumental achievement, a testament to a way of life perfectly attuned to the demands of a fierce planet. Their endurance was built upon a foundation of deep integration with their environment. They did not seek to conquer nature, but to understand it, to move with its rhythms, and to draw sustenance from it without breaking it. Their survival depended on an intimate knowledge that was passed down through generations, the knowledge of animal behavior, of plant cycles, of stone fracture, of weather signs. This was a wisdom accumulated over hundreds of thousands of years, a library of experience stored not in books, but in stories, in skills, and in the very instincts of a people shaped by their world. In an age where humanity's relationship with the planet is often one of dislocation and exploitation, the Neanderthal model of deep, sustainable integration offers a powerful, silent lesson. And finally, their story is a poignant reminder of the fragility of even the most successful cultures. The factors that led to their decline, climate instability, the arrival of a competing species, the vulnerabilities of small populations, are not unique to prehistory. They are forces that have shaped human history time and again. The Neanderthals teach us that no society, no matter how well adapted or resilient, is immune to change. Their fate underscores the importance of flexibility, of the ability to adapt to new circumstances, and of the strength that comes from diverse and interconnected communities. The thread of their existence is not broken. It is woven into our DNA, a biological heirloom that influences our health and our very bodies. It is reflected in the possibility that the first sparks of human symbolism were struck by their hands as well as our own. But most importantly, it endures in the questions they force us to ask about ourselves. By studying them, we are ultimately exploring the boundaries of what it means to be human. We are learning that strength can be found in compassion, that intelligence takes many forms, and that a meaningful life can be built around community, tradition, and a profound connection to the world. The long twilight of the Neanderthals has passed, but as we look up at the stars, the same stars that shone down on their Ice Age world, we can feel a connection across the vast expanse of time. They were here, they endured, they lived complex, meaningful lives, and in remembering them, we honor not just the lost branch of the human family, but a fundamental part of our own enduring spirit. Their silence is not empty. It is filled with the echoes of a profound and lasting legacy. Our journey, which began with the flicker of firelight in a limestone cave, now draws to a close. We have traversed hundreds of thousands of years, from the sun-drenched plains of their divergence to the icy heart of the glacial maximum, from the intimate drama of the hunt to the profound mystery of their inner world. We have witnessed their mastery, their adaptability, their compassion, and their gradual fading from the world they had called home for so long. The story of the Neanderthals is now, in its essential outline, before us, but as the final words are spoken, a different kind of understanding begins to settle, one that is felt more than it is analyzed. The evidence we have relied upon, the stone tools, the bones, the chemical signatures are, in the end, silent things. They are data points on a graph, facts in a textbook. Yet, if one listens with the imagination, a voice can be heard within that silence. It is the voice of the stones. It speaks not in words, but in the memory of action. A Levallois point, resting in the palm of your hand, carries the memory of the precise, skillful blow that released it from its core. It holds the intention of the toolmaker, their hope for a successful hunt, their knowledge passed down from a parent or a mentor. The subtle gloss along its edge is the ghost of countless strokes through animal hide, the sustenance and warmth it provided for a family. The voices in the hearths, the circles of ash and charcoal, they are the remnants of countless gatherings, of social bonds forged in the sharing of food and the telling of stories lost to time. The hearth was the center of their universe, a bulwark against the darkness and the cold, a symbol of community and survival. The cracked and burned bones scattered around it speak of meals shared, of hunger satisfied, of life sustained for one more day in a demanding world. It is in the skeletons themselves, with their healed injuries and worn teeth. These are not merely specimens for study. They are the physical records of individual lives lived with courage and resilience. The old man of Shanadar, with his many ailments, speaks louder than any theory possibly could. His bones testify to a society that valued each member, that understood the strength of the group was measured by its care for the vulnerable. His long life is a monument to Neanderthal compassion. To understand the Neanderthals is to move beyond the facts and figures and to embrace this empathetic connection. It is to recognize that behind every artifact was a person who experienced joy, fear, pain, and love. A person who looked up at the same moon, who sought shelter from the same rain, who felt the same fundamental urge to protect their family and secure their future. Their world was different, their challenges were greater, but their humanity, in its broadest and most essential sense, resonates with our own. The story of the Neanderthals does not have a conventional ending. There is no definitive moment of extinction, no final act. Instead, there is a gradual integration, a blending, a passing of the torch. Their physical form faded, but their essence became a part of us. They are not a failed experiment, but a successful and enduring chapter in the human story. They were the native people of Ice Age Europe, the ultimate survivors, and our closest ancient relatives. As the fire of our narrative now dies down to embers, let the final thought be one of respect and kinship. The wind that whispers outside our windows once swept across the mammoth steppes that they knew so well. The resilience that lies within our own spirit may, in some small part, be a gift from them. The Neanderthals are gone, but the voice of the stones endures, a quiet, eternal reminder of a long winter, a mighty people, and the unbreakable threads that connect us all across the deep and flowing river of time. The great ice sheets have retreated, their colossal weight lifted from the continent. The mammoth steppe has transformed, giving way to forests, farmlands, and cities. The world the Neanderthals knew is gone, buried beneath millennia of geological and climatic change. Yet, in a profound sense, their winter continues. It exists not as a physical reality, but as a season of the human soul, a memory etched into our collective consciousness. To contemplate the Neanderthals is to stand at the edge of this eternal winter and to reflect on the nature of time, memory, and the legacy of all things that pass. Time, for the Neanderthals, was a cyclical force. It was the predictable turn of the seasons, the migration of the herds, the slow growth of a child into an adult within the rhythms of the band. Theirs was a time measured in generations, in the repeated patterns of survival. Our modern conception of time is linear, a relentless arrow pointing toward progress and an uncertain future. The Neanderthal legacy invites us to bridge these two perceptions. Their story, though ended in one linear sense, continues to cycle back into our awareness with each new archaeological discovery, each genetic revelation. They remind us that the past is not a foreign country, but a deep layer of our present, constantly informing and shaping who we are. Memory is the vessel that carries this past forward. The Neanderthals themselves were people of memory. Their survival depended on the memory of where to find water in a drought, the memory of how to track a wounded animal, the memory of which plants healed and which harmed. This practical memory was the bedrock of their culture. We, in turn, are now the keepers of their memory. The fragments they left behind are like pages from a vast, fragmented epic. It is our task, our responsibility, to piece this epic together with care and respect. In remembering them, we grant them a form of continued existence. We pull them from the oblivion of deep time and acknowledge their place in the story of life on Earth. This act of remembrance is also an act of humility. The rise and fall of species, the shifting of climates, the immense scales of geological time, these forces dwarf the brief span of individual human lives and even the entirety of recorded history. The Neanderthals, with their 400,000-year reign, force us to confront our own transience. Our civilizations, for all their technological marvels, are but a blink in the long gaze of Earth's history. Their story is a corrective to human arrogance, a reminder that our tenure on this planet is provisional, and that our survival, like theirs, will ultimately depend on wisdom, adaptability, and the strength of our communities. Finally, the eternal winter of the Neanderthals is a landscape of contemplation. It is a quiet space where we can consider the fundamental questions of existence. What is the meaning of a life lived in harmony with nature? What is the value of a society built on mutual care? What remains of a people when their last breath has been drawn? The Neanderthals answered these questions not with words, but with the example of their lives. Their meaning is found in their endurance. Their value is demonstrated by their compassion. What remains of them is not only in our genes, but in the expansion of our empathy, in the broadening of our definition of what it means to be human. As we conclude this long narrative, the image that remains is not one of an ending, but of a quiet persistence. The Neanderthals have joined the silent majority of species that have lived and died on this planet. But in their silence, they speak volumes. They are a part of the eternal winter, a season of reflection, a time of memory, and a lasting testament to the powerful, beautiful, and fragile experiment of life. Their story is over, but its echo is everlasting. And so, we arrive at the final chapter, not with a proclamation, but with a quiet acknowledgement. The long saga of the Neanderthals, a narrative woven across the fabric of 8,000 centuries, reaches its gentle, inevitable conclusion. We have followed their path from emergence to extinction, from mastery to memory. We have explored their world, their bodies, their minds, and their hearts. Now, as the last light of their existence fades on the horizon of deep time, it is time for a farewell to the first people of the ice, the true natives of a lost world. Imagine a final scene, not of drama, but of simple continuity. In a sheltered valley, a small band gathers around a fire. The air is cold, but the group is warm, wrapped in furs they prepared with skill passed down through generations. An old woman, her face lined with a lifetime of experience, watches the younger members of the group. She remembers the winters that seemed longer, the herds that were more plentiful. She has heard stories, whispered of strange people from the south, but they are just stories on the wind. For now, there is the fire. There is the familiar taste of meat, the sound of a known language, the comfort of family. This is not an end. It is another evening in a succession of countless evenings. For this band, and for the few others scattered across the landscape, life continues as it always has, rooted in tradition and resilience. But the world outside their valley is changing. The climate shifts in unpredictable ways. The great herds thin and the stories on the wind become more substantial. The encounters with the newcomers, Homo sapiens, are perhaps not violent, but they are consequential. There is trade, perhaps an exchange of tools or ideas. There may be friendships, or rivalries, or simply a quiet observation from a distance. Over generations, the bands of newcomers grow more numerous, their networks wider. The Neanderthal bands, always small and isolated, find their traditional ways becoming harder to sustain. A band fails to find enough food, one harsh winter, and does not recover. A young person from another band joins the newcomers, their genes and their knowledge flowing into a new human stream. It is a slow, gentle fading, a blending, a passing. There is no last Neanderthal. There is no final individual who held the entirety of their culture in their heart and then took it to the grave. Instead, their legacy dissolved like a river into a delta, its distinct waters merging with the great sea of humanity. Their physical form disappeared, but their essence was absorbed. The last light of their species did not flicker out. It was diffused, spreading its glow into the dawn of our own world. To say goodbye to them is to acknowledge this diffusion. It is to recognize that they are not truly gone. They are in the resilience that allows us to endure hardship. They are in the compassion that compels us to care for the weak. They are in the curiosity that drives us to explore our own origins. They are in the strands of DNA that, to this day, influence our biology. They are present whenever we look at a cold, starlit night and feel a connection to the ancient past, to the struggles and triumphs of those who came before. The story of the Neanderthals is ultimately a human story. It is a story of adaptation, of community, of the will to live against formidable odds. It is a story that belongs to all of us. As we turn away from their world and back to our own, we carry a part of them with us. We carry the memory of their long winter, the echo of their quiet strength, and the profound lesson of their kinship. The fire in their cave may have gone cold, but the embers of their existence still glow within us, a permanent and gentle warmth from a time of ice. Farewell, then, to the people of the Mammoth Steppe. Farewell to the masters of the Levallois Point, the children of the great glaciers, the keepers of the ancient hearth. Your long watch is over. Your journey is complete. Rest now, in the knowledge that you are remembered. The final embers of the Neanderthal fire have cooled, their physical presence faded into the earth. Yet, the story does not end with a period, but with an ellipsis. The silence that followed their passing is not empty. It is filled with the vibrations of an unanswered symphony, a melody of questions that continues to resonate, driving the relentless engine of scientific inquiry. The quest to understand the Neanderthals is far from over. With each passing year, new technologies and discoveries add deeper, more complex movements to this eternal composition. Consider the profound mysteries that still linger. We have evidence of potential symbolism, but what was the true nature of their inner world? Did they possess an oral tradition, myths and legends that explained the stars above, or the changing seasons? The recent controversial discoveries of cave art potentially predating the arrival of Homo sapiens in Europe tantalize us with the possibility of a Neanderthal artist, a mind capable of translating experience into image. Were these isolated expressions, or were they part of a rich symbolic culture, the physical remnants of which have been lost to the ravages of time? The question of their language remains one of the greatest enigmas. The anatomical and genetic capacity was there, but the structure, the vocabulary, the poetry of their speech is a ghost that has left no trace. We can only listen to the silence and wonder. The precise dynamics of their interactions with Homo sapiens are another fertile ground for exploration. The genetic evidence proves interbreeding occurred, but the social context of these encounters is a blank canvas. Were they violent clashes over resources? Were they peaceful exchanges, even partnerships? Did Neanderthal individuals become fully integrated members of Homo sapiens groups, contributing their knowledge of the local plants, animals, and landscapes? The story of the last Neanderthals may not be one of isolation and decline, but of assimilation and transformation. Each new fossil discovery, especially those from the critical period of overlap around 40,000 years ago, has the potential to rewrite this chapter entirely. The very definition of their extinction is being re-examined. If we carry their DNA, are they truly extinct? Or did they undergo a form of evolutionary merging, their unique biological heritage flowing into the broader river of humanity? This philosophical question challenges our conventional understanding of species and their boundaries. They are gone as a distinct population, but their biological essence persists, a whisper in our genome that continues to influence who we are today. In this sense, the Neanderthals achieved a form of immortality, their legacy carried forward by the very species with whom they once shared a continent. The tools of discovery are becoming ever more powerful. Paleogenomics is advancing at a breathtaking pace. Scientists are now moving beyond sequencing nuclear DNA to analyzing ancient proteins and even attempting to understand the activity of ancient genes. This could reveal not just what genes they had, but how those genes functioned, how their bodies responded to stress, infection, and their environment. Advanced imaging techniques allow us to peer inside fossil skulls, creating detailed digital endocasts that map the impressions of their brains, offering clues about the development of regions associated with speech, memory, and social cognition. The symphony of the Neanderthals is therefore an ongoing performance. Each archaeological dig, each laboratory breakthrough, is a new note added to the score. The narrative is not static. It is a living, breathing entity that evolves with our growing understanding. The Neanderthals, in their silence, remain active participants in a dialogue with the present. They compel us to be humble, to acknowledge the limits of our knowledge, and to remain open to the surprises that the past undoubtedly still holds. So, as we lower the curtain on this telling of their tale, we do so with the acknowledgement that this is merely an interim report. The story of the Neanderthals is a book whose final chapters have yet to be written. Their world, once thought to be a simple, brutal struggle for survival, is now revealed as a complex tapestry of intelligence, culture, and resilience. And the quest to fully understand it, to finally hear the melody of their symphony, remains one of the most captivating journeys in all of science. The conversation with the deep past continues, and the Neanderthals, our closest relatives, still have much to teach us. We have journeyed together through the deep freeze of the Pleistocene, walked alongside the Neanderthals in their world of ice and giants, and witnessed the slow, complex twilight of their distinct existence. We have explored the facts unearthed by science and contemplated the profound mysteries that remain. Now, as our narrative finds its final resting place, it is time to widen the lens and consider the ultimate meaning of their story, not just for our understanding of the past, but for our perception of the human present and future. The Neanderthal saga is not a side note. It is a foundational chapter in the long dawn of humanity, a chapter that bestows upon us a shared inheritance of immense value. The most immediate legacy is the shattering of human uniqueness. For centuries, we have placed ourselves on a pedestal, separate from the natural world, and alone in our capacity for complex culture, compassion, and symbolic thought. The Neanderthals have forcefully toppled that pedestal. They were not us, but they shared with us the most profound human attributes. They cared for their weak, they perhaps honored their dead, they mastered their environment with skill and intelligence, and they may have sought to express meaning beyond the mundane. Their existence proves that the human spirit, in its broadest definition, can flourish in different vessels. We are not a solitary miracle, but one expression of a potential for consciousness that evolved in parallel. This is a humbling and, ultimately, a liberating realization. It connects us more deeply to the tapestry of life. This connection bestows upon us a profound responsibility. As the species that inherited the earth, we are now the custodians of the Neanderthal memory, the caves that sheltered them, the landscapes they hunted, the very sediments that hold their artifacts. These are not just scientific resources, they are sacred sites in the story of our extended family. Protecting this fragile heritage from destruction, whether through climate change, development, or neglect, is a duty we owe to them and to future generations who will seek to understand their own origins. In preserving their world, we preserve a part of ourselves. Furthermore, their story is a timeless source of wisdom. In an era of rapid human-induced climate change, the Neanderthals exemplify the power of deep adaptation. They teach us about resilience, about the strength found in community, and about the critical importance of possessing a granular, intimate knowledge of the ecosystems we inhabit. Their eventual decline, tied to a rapidly shifting environment and competition, serves as a cautionary tale about the vulnerabilities of even the most successful societies when faced with multifaceted change. Their history is a mirror in which we can see reflected our own challenges and opportunities. Finally, the Neanderthal legacy is one of unity. The old, divisive categories of us and them melt away in the light of genetic evidence that proves we are, in part, them. The interbreeding of our ancestors with Neanderthals is a powerful symbol that the boundaries between different kinds of people have always been porous. Our lineage is mixed, our heritage is hybrid. This ancient act of kinship, occurring on the cold plains of prehistoric Eurasia, carries a message for today, that diversity and integration are not modern ideals, but ancient strengths woven into the very fabric of our being. The long dawn of humanity was not a solitary sunrise. It was a slow brightening in which multiple lights flickered and glowed. The Neanderthals were one of the brightest of these lights, burning for an astonishing span of time. Their light has not been extinguished, it has been absorbed into our own. As we move forward into an uncertain future, we carry their inheritance within us, a reminder of our deep connection to the earth, our capacity for compassion, our potential for resilience, and our fundamental kinship with all forms of human life, past and present. Their story is ended, but our story, which is also partly theirs, continues. And it is a richer, deeper, and more meaningful story, because they were here. The narrative has been told, the evidence weighed, the legacy considered. We have followed the path of the Neanderthals, from their emergence to their integration into the story of our own species. Now, in the quiet that follows the story, a deeper contemplation emerges. It is a contemplation not of facts, but of presence, not of events, but of essence. The world today is vastly different, yet the earth itself remains, a silent witness to the immense span of time we have explored. It is to this quiet earth that we now turn our thoughts, to find the enduring meaning of the people who walked it so long ago. Walk into a limestone cave in southern Europe today. Feel the cool, damp air. See the way light from the entrance plays upon ancient stalactites. In the silence, if you listen closely, you can feel the echo of a presence. This is where they lived, loved, and sheltered from the storms of the Ice Age. The walls, which now may be covered with the magnificent art of our own ancestors once, witnessed the simple, profound acts of Neanderthal life. The shaping of a stone tool, the softening of a hide, the sharing of food around a fire. The physical space is a bridge across time. It reminds us that while cultures and species rise and fall, the stage upon which the drama of life is played possesses a profound permanence. The Neanderthals were as deeply rooted in their world as we are in ours, and the earth remembers them. This contemplation leads to a question of responsibility. The Neanderthals lived in a state of dynamic equilibrium with their environment. They were a part of the ecosystem, not its master. Their survival depended on a nuanced understanding of the natural world, an understanding gained over hundreds of thousands of years. In our modern age, where humanity's impact on the planet is profound and often destructive, their example offers a different paradigm. It is a paradigm of belonging rather than domination. To honor the Neanderthals is to consider how we might recapture that sense of integrated belonging, to become native to our planet once again, not as conquerors, but as conscious, caring participants in its intricate web of life. And finally, their story brings us to a meditation on the nature of existence itself. The Neanderthals, for all their strength and adaptability, are gone as a distinct people. This is the fate of all things. Kingdoms fall, civilizations crumble, species vanish. Their passing is a poignant reminder of the transience of all forms. Yet, their story also speaks to what endures. What endures is not the physical form, but the impact, the legacy, the memory. The Neanderthals endure in the lessons they teach us about resilience and compassion. They endure in the scientific curiosity they inspire. They endure in the DNA that shapes our bodies. They have achieved a form of immortality, not through monuments of stone, but through the indelible mark they left on the biological and cultural trajectory of humanity. So, as we take our leave from the world of the Neanderthals, we do not say goodbye to a forgotten relic. Instead, we acknowledge a lasting presence. The quiet earth holds their memory in its layers of rock and soil. The wind that moves through the pine trees carries the echo of their passage. And within us, in our very cells, and in our expanding understanding of what it means to be human, they live on. Their long winter is over, but the warmth of their fire, the strength of their community, and the quiet dignity of their existence continue to illuminate the human story. Theirs was a world of ice, but their legacy is one of enduring light. Our journey, which began with the flicker of firelight in a world of ice, now finds its final resting place. We have traversed vast stretches of time, delved into the intricacies of Neanderthal life, and pondered the mysteries of their disappearance. The story has been told, yet its conclusion is not an end, but a transition from narrative to legacy, from history to meaning. The Neanderthals, as a distinct people, have passed from the earthly stage, but their enduring echo reverberates through the corridors of time, a legacy written in both stone and spirit. This legacy is etched most tangibly in the stone tools that litter the sites of their ancient camps. Each carefully struck flake, each Levallois point, is a fossilized thought. It is a permanent record of a moment of intention, of skill, of a mind solving a problem of survival. These stones are their library, their autobiography. They do not speak with words, but they communicate with perfect clarity the story of a people who were observant, intelligent, and masters of their material world. To hold such a tool is to feel a connection across the millennia, to touch the hand of the artisan who made it. This is a legacy of practicality and ingenuity, a testament to the human capacity to shape the world to meet its needs. But the deeper legacy, the one written in spirit, is far more profound. It is the legacy of compassion evidenced by the care they showed for their injured and elderly. The old man of Shanidar, who lived for years with devastating disabilities, is a powerful symbol not of weakness, but of strength, the strength of a community that valued every member. This compassion is a fundamental human virtue, and the Neanderthals demonstrate that it is not a recent acquisition of our species, but a deep-seated impulse with ancient roots. Their legacy challenges the simplistic notion of a brutal struggle for existence, reminding us that empathy and social cohesion are equally powerful forces in the story of survival. Their legacy is also one of resilience. To endure for 400,000 years in the face of Ice Age extremes is an achievement that defies comparison. They faced challenges that would obliterate modern civilization's temperatures, that plunged to unimaginable lows, landscapes dominated by predators, and a constant pressing need for food. Their success was built on a profound knowledge of their environment, a knowledge passed down through generations. They teach us the value of tradition, of learned experience, and of a deep, intimate connection to the natural world. In an age of rapid change and environmental disconnect, their example is a beacon, reminding us of the strength that comes from truly knowing and belonging to a place. And finally, their legacy is one of unity. The discovery of Neanderthal DNA within our own genomes has irrevocably changed our understanding of ourselves. We are not a pure, isolated lineage. We are hybrids, the product of ancient encounters between different kinds of humanity. This genetic intimacy dissolves the barrier between us and them. The Neanderthals are not a they. They are a part of we. Their story is our story. This shared inheritance is a powerful antidote to prejudice, a biological testament to the fact that diversity and mixing have always been sources of strength in the human journey. The fire in the Neanderthal cave has long since gone out. The last voice speaking their language has been silent for tens of thousands of years, but the echo of their existence is everlasting. It is in the stones they shaped, in the compassion they demonstrated, in the resilience they embodied, and in the very blood that flows in our veins. They were the first people of the ice, the masters of a lost world, and our closest ancient kin. Their long twilight has faded, but the dawn they helped create, the dawn of a humanity aware of its deep, interconnected past, is still breaking. And in that dawn, we remember them. As the final notes of the Neanderthal story fade into the deep resonance of history, we are left not with a sense of closure, but with an invitation to learn. The Neanderthals, in their long silence, have become our teachers. Their lives, their struggles, and their adaptations offer a curriculum of wisdom from a world long lost, yet increasingly relevant to our own. They instruct us not through texts or lectures, but through the powerful, silent testimony of their existence, providing lessons in sustainability, community, and the very meaning of resilience. The first lesson is one of deep integration with the environment. The Neanderthals did not merely live on the land, they were of the land. Their survival was inextricably linked to a fluent understanding of its rhythms, the migration of animals, the growth cycles of plants, the turning of the seasons. They possessed a knowledge system built over millennia, a granular wisdom that allowed them to thrive in an ecosystem that was often harsh and unforgiving. In our contemporary era, characterized by a disconnect from the natural world and a looming environmental crisis, the Neanderthal example is a powerful reminder of a different way of being. They teach the value of observing, of learning from, and ultimately, of respecting the complex systems that sustain life. Theirs was a sustainable existence by necessity, and in that necessity lies a profound lesson for our age of abundance and exploitation. Their second lesson is the paramount importance of community. The Neanderthal band was a tightly knit unit, a social organism where the well-being of the individual was inseparable from the well-being of the whole. The evidence of care for the injured and infirm is perhaps the most eloquent testament to this. In a world where strength was paramount, they understood that true strength lay in solidarity. The survival of the group depended on cooperation, shared labor, and mutual support. This stands in stark contrast to the hyper-individualism of modern societies. The Neanderthals teach us that facing great challenges, be they ice ages or pandemics, climate shifts or social upheavals, requires a foundation of strong, compassionate community. Their success was a collective achievement, a lesson in the power of we over I. A third lesson lies in their resilience, a quality forged in the crucible of extreme adversity. For over 400,000 years, they endured conditions that are almost unimaginable to us. Their resilience was not a passive endurance, but an active, dynamic process of adaptation. It was built on a foundation of practical skills, deep knowledge, and social flexibility. They teach us that resilience is not about avoiding change, but about developing the capacity to withstand it, to adapt to it, and to continue forward. In a world facing rapid and unpredictable change, the Neanderthal spirit of resilience is spirit of grit, ingenuity, and perseverances a vital inheritance. Finally, they teach a lesson of humility. Their story forces us to confront the sheer scale of deep time and the transience of species. They were immensely successful, yet they are gone. This is a humbling corrective to human arrogance. It reminds us that our own tenure on this planet is brief, and that no civilization, no matter how advanced, is immune to the forces of change. Recognizing our place in this vast timeline can inspire a sense of perspective and a more thoughtful approach to our future. The Neanderthals are silent teachers, but their curriculum is clear. They instruct us in living sustainably, in valuing community, in cultivating resilience, and in embracing humility. We are the students of a lost world, and the wisdom they offer is not locked in the past, but is a guiding light for the future. By listening to their silence, we may yet learn to live more wisely in our own noisy and complex world. Their voice may be stilled, but their lessons echo through the ages. The story of the Neanderthals, which we have followed through epochs of ice and stone, does not represent a break in the human narrative, but a critical link in an unbroken chain. Their long reign and subsequent blending into the broader human family are not an ending, but a pivotal chapter in the continuous, evolving saga of our genus, Homo. To see them as a separate failed experiment is to misunderstand the fluid and interconnected nature of evolution. Their journey is inextricably woven into our own, a fundamental part of the path that led to the present moment. The chain of humanity is not a single, straight line, but a complex braid of many strands. For a vast period of time, the Neanderthal strand was one of the strongest and most dominant across the continent of Eurasia. They were not a deviation from the main path. They were the main path for hundreds of thousands of years. Their adaptations, their robust bodies, their sophisticated tools, their social structures were the peak of human evolution for their time and place. The arrival of Homo sapiens did not simply snap their strand. Instead, the two strands intertwined. The genetic evidence is undeniable proof of this intertwining. This was not a replacement, but a merger, a meeting of two different expressions of humanity that resulted in a new, hybridized lineage that carried forward the best of both. This perspective transforms the Neanderthals from a mysterious other into direct ancestors. While not all of our genetic heritage comes from them, a significant portion of people alive today carries their DNA. This means that the qualities that allowed them to survive their resilience to cold, their immune system adaptations, their strength were advantageous enough to be passed on and preserved in the human gene pool. In a very real sense, their evolutionary success contributed to our own. The chain did not break with their disappearance as a distinct group. It was reforged, stronger and more diverse, with their essence integrated into its links. The unbroken chain continues today. The same drives that propelled the Neanderthals, the need for shelter, for community, for meaning, for mastery over our environments, to propel us. We see reflections of their ingenuity in our own technological innovations. We see echoes of their compassion in our hospitals and social systems. We see their resilience in our efforts to combat climate change and overcome global challenges. The specific challenges have changed, but the fundamental human journey of adaptation and survival continues unabated. Therefore, the Neanderthals are not a closed book on a forgotten shelf. They are a vibrant, essential part of the ongoing story we are all living. Their legacy is not confined to museums. It is alive in our biology, in our capacity for culture, and in the enduring human spirit that they so powerfully exemplified. By understanding them, we gain a deeper appreciation for the length and complexity of the human journey. We see that our story is much older and richer than we often imagine. A tapestry woven from many threads, including the strong, resilient thread of the Neanderthals. The chain stretches back into the deep past, through the Neanderthals and beyond, and it stretches forward into a future we are now shaping. We are the current bearers of this legacy, the living continuation of a story that began with the first humans who walked the earth. The Neanderthals remind us that we are part of something vast, something ancient, and something truly extraordinary. The journey continues, and they walk with us still. The great saga of the Neanderthals, a chronicle spanning the rise and fall of ice ages, the mastery of a continent, and the quiet intertwining with another branch of humanity, has reached its natural conclusion. We have followed their path from the shadows of prehistory to the forefront of modern scientific understanding. We have witnessed their strength, their intelligence, their compassion, and their profound connection to a world of ice and giants. Now, as the last chapter closes, we are left, not with an empty silence, but with the enduring warmth of a final ember aglow that continues to illuminate the depths of our shared past. Imagine that ember, a last flicker of light in the vast darkness of time. It is the cumulative warmth of countless hearths around which families gathered, sharing food and stories. It is the fading heat from a hand that held a stone tool with skill and purpose. It is the residual warmth of a body that was tenderly laid to rest in a shallow grave, surrounded by loved ones. This ember is the essence of the Neanderthal spirit, their resilience, their community, their will to live. Though their fires have long since cooled, the warmth they generated has not entirely vanished from the universe. That warmth now resides in us. It is present in the curiosity that drives us to uncover their story. It is present in the empathy we feel when we learn of the care they showed for their injured. It is present in the awe we experience when contemplating their endurance through hundreds of millennia. And it is present, quite literally, in the genetic material they bequeathed to us, a biological whisper from a lost world. We are the keepers of their warmth. In remembering them, in striving to understand them, we breathe gently on that final ember, ensuring its glow persists. The story of the Neanderthals is ultimately a story about what endures. Grandeur fades, species pass, ice ages come and go, but what remains is the impact a life, a people, a species has on the flow of history. The Neanderthals endured long enough to meet us, to share their world with us, and to contribute to who we are. Their legacy is a permanent part of the human narrative. They have earned their place, not as brutish caricatures, but as respected ancestors, as kin from a different time. And so, we let the story rest. The wind has swept away the last footprints on the mammoth steppe. The caves stand silent, but the echo of their existence is woven into the fabric of the earth and the soul of humanity. The long winter of the Neanderthals is over, but the glow of their lives continues to cast a soft, lasting light on the path of human history. They are gone, yet they are everywhere. They are remembered. The end.